All right, time for, I guess, a little recap from this past weekend in Lake Placid. Overall, pretty happy with the day. The racing is getting faster and faster and things are getting harder and harder, so complaining about a podium would be silly at this point. It definitely need to be higher up on the podium to be satisfied, but overall, especially considering how the first half of the season went, I'm happy with how the body performed, first and foremost, and getting through the first race of the second half of the build, or second half of the season, unscathed, and feeling really good about where I'm at leading into the next couple of races. Third place overall, first time in a full Ironman that I've come third. I've had quite a few podiums, but always been first or second. So that was a new one for me, but that, I guess, was bound to happen at some point. Just going through the day, the swim was okay. Not great. I didn't have a good start, and that was kind of, in hindsight, that took any real chance that I had at winning away. And we were all on the start line, and I was over on the side with Josh Amberger, and the hope was to use him to try to use his feet. Obviously, he was gonna get away on his own, but it was to try to use his feet to just get into a good spot early on. I have pretty decent top end speed, and he decided right before the gun to switch sides and run to the other side, and that was the side that Cody and Ben were on, and they were able to execute my plan very well. Cody had a great swim. I swam on his feet at Texas, and so the hope was to be with him and with Ben, and I came out a minute and change, maybe even more than that, behind them with Joe Skipper right on my feet, and that made it a pretty tough for me. Just ended up biking in no man's land all alone for most or pretty much the entire ride, and so that got to keep getting better at executing. Especially that first 500 meters is really important, and this one in particular, when we dove in, when we started, it just felt like I was swimming backwards for the first couple hundred, as I was just kind of in the wake and not in the front of it. So I just didn't get out hard enough, and I paid for the price for that all day long. Transition one was a longer run, which I was quite fine with. I had a really quite good transition. I think it was the fastest transition of the day by a fair bit, and was able to put a good amount of time onto Joe, and he ended up not coming up on me until about 20 minutes into the bike, which ideally I'm able to hold that off a bit longer or get a gap on him on the swim, but that didn't happen. And we both kind of joke about it before every time we race each other at Texas, at Arizona. He comes up and he's like, yeah, good thing you're going to have a colored cap so I can pick you out easily. They give us colors for media if it's filmed, and so he's able to spot me and knows that he wants to be on my feet, and did the same thing in Arizona and in Texas. It worked out well for him in Arizona. He was able to win that one, and so I'm just we joke about it. We know that it makes my day a little bit more difficult if we come out together, because he's got the ability to ride really hard for a couple of hours early on, and that he did that, rode up to the front group, and he ended up dropping me pretty quickly through kind of the only real technical section, or with a bunch of turns through the little bobsled parking lot or whatever, and then I was on my own pretty much the rest of the day. Michael Weiss did pass me at some point. I rode with him for a little bit, and then it was no man's land for the rest of the time. And the group up front was able to work together. Obviously, they always get a bit of help from the motos as well, which doesn't help if you're back by yourself. And that's just a part of the race now. And we know that that's a fact. And so I've either got to develop the ability to ride much harder for the first hour, or not miss the swim group that I did, and that's just the way it is. And yeah, I mean, overall on the bike, I lost a fair bit of time to a couple of the guys up front, but I was really happy with the overall power. Ran, the files after the race, and overall drag numbers were good. So really positive there. And then onto the run. My watch must have fallen out of the bag as I was running through transition, and got everything on, and I was looking around for my watch, nowhere to be found, so I just ran out without it. But came back, and somebody, I'm guessing one of the volunteers found it and threw it with my stuff after the fact, because I did come in on the loan, so maybe they figured, yep, it must be his. But yeah, it cost me a bit of time looking for that, didn't find it, so ran the first marathon that I've ever done without any watch, which was I wouldn't do that again on purpose. Not necessarily for the pacing, but for the ability to get splits. I think that's really helpful on a race like this. There's out and backs on either direction, so I could have got some good splits and known if I was gaining and how fast, and use that information. But that wasn't in the cards, and so. And it's also a tough race, just with the hilly nature of how the course, you're starting downhill. So you obviously are going to be going as fast, that's going to be the fastest section of the day, the first 5K. But you don't want to blow yourself up there either. So, having that information, heart rate information, would have been helpful. But it was good to know that I don't need to rely on that. I was still able to run a 2:30 or 2:41, which is the course record there by a good margin. On the run, it was business as usual. I think I was fifth off the bike. Had Michael Weiss just a couple minutes in front of me. I caught him in the first 10K, and then Josh was running pretty well for the first bit, and then he seemed to fall off pace a little bit just going up the hill back into town the first time. That's where I kind of shoot a good chunk of time into him, and then ended up passing him with at least with about 10K to go, maybe a little bit more, and then at that point it was a pretty big gap up front. So if if Joe and Ben held steady, it was going to be pretty tough to catch them at that point. It rained pretty hard right at the beginning of the second lap for maybe about 10 to 15 minutes, and then that was fantastic while it was raining, and then it stopped and the sun came out, and then it really was not fantastic. Definitely got hot and humid. You could see all of us as we crossed the finish line were hurting a fair amount. Overall, I was happy with the nutrition plan I was using, or I've been using. A new prototype EFS Pro with First Endurance, and so it was a little bit of unknown because I haven't had as much practice as I normally would with it going in, but happy how I felt on the bike, and then through most of the run, fought some cramps off in the last 10K, but never actually stopped me. It just kind of slowed me down a couple times, but was able to get on top of them and make them go away pretty easily. So overall, I'm happy with how things went. Obviously would have liked to be further up the podium. Joe had a fantastic day, especially on the bike, and Ben was just solid all day long. Good swim, good bike, good run. And, most people don't know, but he had a bit of a flat. So if he wouldn't have had that, maybe he had to jump off and refill his tires. So maybe he would have been able to fight for the win. But overall, happy with how the day went. Happy to jumpstart the second half of the season on a little bit better note than the first half of my year went. So moving forward, I've got to just start prepping for the World Championships. I've got Finland and Nice on the docket, and obviously there's some things to do fitness-wise to prep, that I still want to accomplish between now and then. But I also need to kind of revamp my nutrition plan for Nice, especially because basically we're going to have a pretty long descent at the end of the ride, but we have that long climb at the beginning of the ride, and so we're going to be working a lot harder early on than I normally would in an Ironman. So have to the engine's going to be burning hotter. There's going to be higher carbohydrate need earlier on. So, but then there's going to be an opportunity to kind of refuel leading into the run. And so I've got to play around with when I take the Delta G and how many, carbs I'm taking early on in the ride. And so I've got some work to do there. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But yeah, that's what I've got on the docket. And then, those are the next 2 races. And then after that, we'll kind of reassess and then plan out the rest of the season. I do plan on going to Santa Marta in early October. Probably do Ironman Florida to end off the season there. But we'll worry about those races after Worlds. That's all I've got for you this time. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.